One argument I get into quite often is cash flow versus capital growth. There are a lot of people out there, a lot of professional people in the real estate industry, a lot of advisors, and a lot of actual investors, as well as would-be investors, who think that cash flow is more important than capital growth when it comes to property investment. And I can really understand why. Because it makes them feel better to have rent coming in when the actual capital growth is like a promise. And if they don't know how to choose a really good asset, of course they're going to want that rent coming in to make them feel good about themselves and their decisions. However, it's a real problem in property. And I've got to stop getting on those Facebook pages, looking at the comments that these investors and these experts post about cash flow opportunities, because it really gets my back up. And every now and then I get in an argument with one of them, and one took me on recently, and he came back with saying, I'd rather get 5% per annum return on $3 million than 10% on $1 million. And I'm like, yeah, so would I, except that that's a really stupid argument. And what really annoys me is that on the surface, when you add up those two returns, yeah, sure, it is better to get 5% on 3 million than 10% on 1 million. But how the hell did he get the 3 million in the first place, other than plucking it out of the air? Here's the thing. I've done some research on this, and I want to share it with you. This guy saying this was actually a property advisor. And if he's giving this advice as a justification to his strategies to his clients, then he is misleading them. For starters, where does his extra $2 million equity come from? It's like in his world, investors are given a choice. They're handed $1 million and said you can have this with 10% per annum return, or you can have $3 million, but you only get half the return. And if that's the case, I take the $3 million. But the thing is, it doesn't work that way. What actually happens is that you need to build from 1 million, if you can get 1 million in the first place, to 3 million. How do you build? Well, I'm telling you right now, cash flow doesn't get you from 1 million to 3 million, not in the short term anyway. Capital growth gets you from 1 million to 3 million. Let me explain. The inference of his argument is that cash flow allows you to borrow more so that you've got more skin in the game. But if most of that mythical $3 million is borrowed funds, you're not going to get the benefit of that extra skin if all you're doing with that extra rent is paying down debt. Because if the equity isn't growing through capital growth, you haven't bought yourself an investment, you've just bought yourself a chunk of debt. Let me illustrate. All investors have to start somewhere. And usually that means saving up a nice big deposit or accessing equity in your home. So let's assume that you have this equity and you can choose between a high yield, low growth option or a high growth, low yield option. So let's take the smartass's example of 10% versus 5% growth. And let's assume that the A grade property, the one that gets 10% per annum growth, has a really woeful rental income. Let's say 3%. The other one, which I'm going to say is C grade, although most C grades don't go up 5% per annum, it gets double the rent. I'm feeling generous. Let's assume they also have the same costs. That poor old A grade owner, he has to tip more money in the can every month, every year, in order to hope that that property goes up in value. It's going to cost him around $18,000 a year, so I can absolutely understand why cash flow is so compelling. Let's fast forward 10 years. Because this is where it really counts. The A grade property, according to the smartass, is worth just over $2.5 million. The C grade is worth just over 1.6 million. But here is where it gets interesting. The A grade owner has lost around $225,000 over that time because the rent hasn't covered the mortgage. The C grade owner has made $75,000 over the same period of time because his rent's higher. Notice how I'm saying A got tax back, C had to pay tax. When you throw all of this in the pot, here's what the upshot is after 10 years. A grade owner has made a gain of $1.6 million and C grade has made a gain of $875,000. Who's going to get to their $3 million equity quicker? But you know what? I think these capital growth estimates are way too high. And I think the rental yield estimate for A grade property is also too high. Well, I think C grade, well, we can get a bit more rent for that one. This time, I'm looking at say 7% per annum growth for A grade. That's roughly doubling every 10 years. And no, property does not double every 10 years, but some properties do. The C grade property, however, will definitely not double in 10 years, probably more likely a 2% per annum growth. And I must say, this growth rate will never be uniform year after year. It will fluctuate. I'm talking about averages. Okay, the yield. A grade, let's give it 2% yield. And let's give C grade 8% yield, because in some areas you can get that high. The upshot? A after 10 years, A's gain after 10 years isn't quite so striking. We're talking about $980,000 after a decade. But C is still a long way. Noting that I have put 4 times the rental income, more realistic capital growth estimates. What are we looking at for C grade? After 10 years, a little over $600,000. Same value property, same mortgage repayments, different quality assets. Smartass is never going to get from $1 million to $3 million in equity if he plays the cash flow game. You see, we pay tax on that positive cash flow and it doesn't compound. Whereas with capital growth, it compounds and we only pay tax when we sell that property. So effectively, you're getting an investment return on a future tax liability. If $1 million is invested in a high growth asset, you'll have a variety of ways after a decade that you can use that equity, even if you haven't had the cash flow to allow you to borrow more to buy more C grade assets. Otherwise, how do you get to $3 million worth of equity? If you had that in the first place, you'd be mad to settle for a 5% return if 10% was on the table. Give me capital growth over yield every day of the week. Now, this is just an example of where transparency and more truth is required in the property game. I'd love it if you join the conversation.